Hello, everybody. Chris Profi, Musically Obsessed. As you can see, I've got my friend Brendon Snyder here. How you doing, Brendon?
Hey, everyone. No, I'm doing good. Thanks for having me, Chris.
And we are the CD vinyl guys. Today, what we're going to be discussing are the three vocalists of Iron Maiden: Paul Di'Anno, Bruce Dickinson, and Blaze Bayley. And we are titling this The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. So we're going to try to discuss everything we like or maybe we don't like about these vocalists. And I mean, the amount of albums that Maiden has come out with, and we could probably be discussing this for hours, but we're going to limit it. We're going to probably try to limit it to a shorter video. We're not going to put you guys through a 3-hour video.
Well, Lord knows with all of the Iron Maiden stuff, we certainly could spend a few hours doing this. But, I was just thinking about this. So Di'Anno's got 2 albums. Blaze Bayley has 2 albums. Right. And then, of course, we got the whole catalog of Dickinson. But even with Dickinson, he's got the pre-reunion where he was one way and the band sounded one way, and then the post-reunion Dickinson. So I don't know. There's kind of like 4 singers when I think about it. But what's nice is at least we don't have a singer that only had 1 album. Right. We got to hear all the singers for that matter, but they came in, they made an album, they grew with the band, they went on tour, then they made the next album kind of a thing. And I right off the bat, I'm just saying, I enjoy all 3. And I grew up with Bruce Dickinson, so I'm always going to be partial to him. Mm-hmm. But I came into Maiden during No Prayer for the Dying and Fear of the Dark. And I know a lot of people don't like those albums, but personally, I love them. Fear of the Dark being the last one that Dickinson did before he decided to go off and do his solo thing, which I think was cool. I enjoyed all of that as well. And then Blaze Bayley came in. And personally, I love Blaze Bayley.
Me too.
Completely different style vocalist for the band. Mm-hmm. So Dickinson, is more operatic and everything. Di'Anno had the raw sort of punk feel, the grittiness to it and so forth. So all 3 different. And Blaze gets a lot of flack for his different sound that he is. But personally, I love it. There's things I don't like about it. But right off the bat, I'm just saying I do like Blaze Bayley.
And I'll say this for the record, too. I love Blaze Bayley as well. I think Virtual 11 and The X Factor are 2 underrated albums. I've done videos about those 2 records before, and I love them. And
well,
I love everything Blaze. What were you saying?
I was just going to say, you're right that not only are there underrated records, but even within the band, they're performing tracks from both of these albums with Dickinson. And I think that says a lot that, maybe people don't like those because Blaze Bayley sang on it. And of course, it wasn't Dickinson, who everyone was used to and so forth. But the music that's on there, the songs that were written are good songs. They're still being played live today.
Yeah, The Klansman and Sign of the Cross, just 2 epic songs.
Absolutely. And it shows the quality that he was part of, at least with the band and what he helped create. So I think, regardless of what people might think of Bayley, and he's an epic sounding vocalist. His vocals are in the much lower range, which is different than Dickinson. Yep. But added something different, made it unique. And I appreciate that about what Iron Maiden was trying to do.
And here's my only negative thing about Blaze, and I guess this is going to fit into that ugly category. Mm-hmm. I love his vocals that he did on the 2 records. I love everything he's done post-Maiden. Anybody who questions that, check out the Blaze Bayley solo records. They're phenomenal.
The latest one in and of itself that just came out this year is outstanding.
Right. And I love the stuff he did with Wolfsbane.
Mm-hmm.
The Wolfsbane stuff is great. I have a bootleg of Blaze trying to sing some of the classic Maiden stuff live that Bruce did. Mm-hmm. He can't do it, but here's the reason why he can't do it. It's not that he can't sing. You were hinting towards this before, not hinting toward it. You said it. They've got different vocal ranges.
Right.
So Blaze has a darker, deeper tone to his voice. Bruce is more up there in the operatic range, like you had mentioned. Mm-hmm. And Blaze was trying to sing those songs. He can't. Those songs were written for Bruce Dickinson.
Right.
And he just it doesn't come off well. He's out of tune. He's straining. And it's not because they're not made for his voice.
I wonder if that's why Maiden never released a live album.
Yeah.
You know, they released live albums after every album they put out, kind of a thing. But during that time frame, they didn't do it. No live videos. There's a live. He did "Afraid to Shoot Strangers" that appeared on Best of the Beast. That's behind me there. So there's a couple live tracks floating around, of which I think he did great. But when he did those, he didn't try to sing like Bruce Dickinson.
Yeah.
You know, he pulled the registers down and everything. So, you know, but that also goes back to Deano, right? Deano doesn't sound anything like these two, and he wasn't doing, you know, the operatic, the big bombastic heavy metal style, you know, vocals that Bruce Dickinson does, and yet it worked for Maiden. A lot of people think the first two albums are their best.
Yeah, I love the Deano years. I mean, the debut and Killer, just great records. You had mentioned that Deano brought a raw quality to the words, to the songs. I think he also brought like a punk sensibility to it. And that's what I think is funny, because the new wave of British heavy metal was like all like negative punk. But you listen to those first two Maiden albums, there's a lot of punk influence in those songs. And Paul Deano sort of had that air about him when he
and, I agree. I mean, and you know, if nothing else, he was coming in with the short hair and everything.
Yeah.
I mean, there's stories about it that the record label wanted them to get rid of him before the signing of it because he was not metal. They were signing, you know, someone different, and they just didn't think that this should be their appearance. It worked though.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the relationship didn't last there, but no, I agree. The vocal style that Deano does is different, but those early songs are more driving, you know, rocking sort of thing. You know, they weren't that progressive, epic nature that they got into later in the 80s with Dickinson, but really more so now. So it's interesting that the style of the music too shifted around the vocalist too. I don't know if that was really a thing that they set out to do, or just something that was happening due to the times.
Yeah, I mean, you listen to Bruce's first album, which was Number of the Beast. Compare that to Paul Diano's last album, Killers. I mean, they're worlds apart.
Absolutely. I mean, I always think of Maiden as these three separate, you know, eras. It happens to be the same name, but they really wrote in a more punk vibe on the first two albums. Then they got into the metal scene of things. And then we've got the Blaze Bayley, which was still continuing that, but it was a different style. It was a darker style and a slower style. And they really started to get into those epic songs like Sign of the Cross.
Right. And what's funny is they've gone back to that darker style now.
That's true.
I think it's because maybe, you know, with Bruce's voice changing, the throat cancer, I don't think he can sing as high as he used to. So I think that is sort of, you know, changing the way that Maiden is writing songs now. So it's almost like they're going back to that darker sound.
Yeah, that's true. I certainly hear that a lot in Senjutsu. The album itself is in a much more mid-range. The tracks, we don't have a lot of, you know, fast-paced songs and things of that nature within it. And the vocals are definitely more brooding within it, and sort of just, you know, he can hit notes, you know, high notes and stuff, but he's not like doing it in that theatrical way that he used to do, kind of a thing. But again, is that a style that is being pushed within the band? Is that Steve Harris directing that? Is that because of Bruce Dickinson getting older, throat cancer, etc.? What
a little bit of both.
Is causing that? But then again, I mean, how old is Bruce? We got to cut him some slack too. I mean, these guys are aging. And you know, I'm okay with that. It's like I don't expect these guys to sound the way that they did, you know, in their prime back in the 80s. So I'm certainly not sitting here saying that this has to do, you know, you can't sing like you did, you're no good. This is bands age, people age, and so forth. But we haven't really touched specifically. I mean, we've used Dickinson to reference a lot around Bayley and Deano.
Right.
But Dickinson himself, sometimes he was too operatic. And there's things I love about Dickinson, but sometimes it's just too much. And you know, it's interesting. I'd kind of love pull him back a little bit and then push some of the other singers up a little bit, you know, kind of a thing. There's definitely the good and the bad with him too. He's not
Yeah.
the be all end all of singers.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that because I was going to say that when people rank Maiden singers, it's usually pretty easy to do. Most people are going to say Bruce Dickinson,
Yep.
Diano, Blaze Bayley at the bottom, right? But I agree with you. I think Bruce can sometimes get too operatic. But the other thing too, you had mentioned Fear of the Dark, which for me is I love that album as well.
Yeah.
I love the title track. I love Wasting Love. I like how they got like sort of a hard rock edge with Judas My Guide and Weekend Warriors.
Right.
But Bruce started to get this growl to his voice. And I think it started in No Prayer for the Dying. And I don't know why he was doing it. It's almost like he was trying to change his vocal approach, but like growling thing that I didn't like. And I would put that into the ugly category. It's like, Bruce, stop with this growling thing that you're doing and just sing the song.
Yeah, he did go into a much lower range for those two records. That's true. And I know that the band itself did set out to make what they called a hard rock record. Yep. So that's why also, like, if you look at the photos, they're all in blue jeans and stuff. You know, the idea was that stuff that they were previously doing on Seventh Son of a Seventh Son, and what's the album right before that? Got it right there. Somewhere in Time.
Somewhere in Time.
Yeah. They were stripping all that away. And they were making a raw record. It didn't go over as well with fans, I guess. But, you know, again, they saw out to do that. And a lot of people say, oh, the producer, you know, did bad, or it's a bad mix, or et cetera, et cetera. No, Iron Maiden is very methodical in everything they do. So if you think there's a bad mix or a bad song or a bad whatever, it's not in their eyes. They have really looked at all of this and decided to do these things. It's just sometimes we look at it and say, why did they choose to do that?
Right. So, I mean, we've talked about the positives and negatives about Blaze and Dickinson, and I don't know, are there negatives about Paul Di'Anno? I mean, the only thing I can think of is that they only did 2 albums with him, probably because that was as far as they could go with him. It's almost like he could only do so much with his voice. Not saying his voice was bad. It's
right.
Just that that's all they could just make Iron Maiden and Killers. And then after that, it was like, okay, we can't go any further with Paul Di'Anno at vocals. We need somebody who's going to take us to that next level. So I almost feel like if there was a negative about Paul Di'Anno, was that he was just limited with his vocal technique.
Yeah, I think that I agree. Those first 2 albums, it's all very much sung the same way. Yeah. And I don't know that he could do more. And if you listen to Di'Anno's solo work, it's all pretty much in that same range and style, the way that he sang, which is not bad. I like it. I love those first 2 albums, but they could have easily gotten into a rut of producing the exact same album each release after that. And they didn't. They wanted to do something different. And I think there were some issues with Di'Anno too at the time, you know, personally within the band, and or maybe substance abuse or whatever that led to it. But I know they have mentioned the exact same thing you're just saying, which is they wanted to go a different direction, and he wasn't going to be able to do that. And they had toured with Samson, who Bruce Dickinson was part of when he was just called Bruce. I don't know why he went under that name, but and they liked him, and so they were like, that's what we need to be able to do this. We need to go to the next level, and look what it did. You know,
oh my God. Yeah, I mean, it took them to the next level and beyond. It took them to the universe of metal.
Look at it today. I mean, a lot of, again, this is, you know, I don't have the numbers off the top of my head about how many records they've sold. They've actually sold a lot of albums around the world. Not one country has sold a lot. Like, they don't have big sales records in the US or even the UK where they're from, but they have sold a lot. But even aside from that, you put all that aside, Iron Maiden sells out stadiums. In my opinion, I think Maiden is bigger than Metallica. Oh, worldwide, fan-wise, and what they can do live in terms of selling out huge festivals and things. So, you know, a lot of people will say, oh, you know, Metallica is the biggest metal band out there, kind of a thing. And they are, maybe in terms of publicity, who follows them, who's a great band. A lot of people don't want to give the credit to Iron Maiden. Iron Maiden is out there with Bruce Dickinson flying his own 747 around to different countries, playing these one-off shows, and they're humongous.
Yeah.
just it's amazing what they've grown into. And you know, you've got to give credit to both Deano and Bayley for that. So while Dickinson certainly has done the heavy lifting for all of that and took the band to that, they may never have gotten there, and they might not have stayed there if Bayley had stayed in the band. I don't know. I don't know whether fans would have come around to it or not. But you know, these guys carried the legacy. You got Deano who started it, Bayley who carried it in you know, the dark years, the 90s. You know, nobody wanted to be a metal band in the 90s. Judas Priest had issues with Ripper Owens, no matter how great his vocals were. People weren't jumping on that. So Iron Maiden was kind of going through the same thing.
Well, what I think is good about you and I'm going to give us props, is that we both acknowledge each era of Iron Maiden, and we both like each era of Iron Maiden. Because there's a lot of people out there who have said, no, I hate Blaze Bayley. I hate those records. The X Factor sucks. Virtual 11 is even worse. And they don't even give a chance to those records or Blaze. And I challenge those people out there, go back to those records, but don't go into it thinking you're going to listen to Somewhere in Time.
Right.
It's a different.
Got to be open to it.
Yeah. And Blaze is a great vocalist for what he does.
They're fantastic albums, and it's, if you can put aside the fact that you're not going to listen to Bruce Dickinson or whoever is your favorite vocalist, and you're just going to listen to an album, I think, it's my opinion, I like X Factor best out of the two. But that album is so deep and so complex in what it is, and Blaze really added to that. The emotive way that he sang it, it may have been different sounding than Bruce Dickinson, but the emotional level and power that he brought to it, the way that he did his own vocals on that, I think are outstanding. I mean, all three of the vocalists have positives. All three of the vocalists did great things. And then there's negatives about each one of them. There's things, you know, pluses and minuses I could take, but I certainly don't think that, you know, like when Blaze gets oftentimes put at the bottom, he's always, you never see anybody who says he's the best, right? And I don't know that he could outdo Dickinson.
No,
I didn't grow up with Deano, so I'm always going to put Blaze at number 2. I liked that era. I came up at the tail end of the Dickinson era and rode it right through into the 90s with Blaze and welcomed it.
Well, for me, I mean, I came into Iron Maiden with Somewhere in Time. That was my first record, and that's probably why it's my favorite record.
It's a great record.
Oh, it's awesome. And I didn't find the Paul Di'Anno stuff till later. But I really liked that. And I grew to really like the Paul Di'Anno years. But then obviously when Blaze came in, at first I didn't really care for it because it was so different. But I think those albums and his voice has really aged well with Maiden. For me, ranking them though, you know what? I think I'd be with you, because Bruce definitely is the top. But I think I would put Blaze second, because I listened to X Factor and Virtual 11 more than I listened to the debut and Killers.
Yeah, I'm the same way in that. But I would also say that it's just his singing ability. He is a better singer, different, but a better singer than Deano is. What he's capable of and what he can do. A lot of this is subjective and opinion based, obviously. And I think the people that grew up and first heard the debut and Killers are going to have a different affinity for it than for us who found it later. But I grew up with both Dickinson, but I definitely grew up through Blaze Bayley. So he might be different, and a lot of people maybe don't like him, but I love it. I'm going to stick with that.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I mean, we had mentioned too, the songwriting changed with each vocalist too. So in the bulk of Iron Maiden songs that are classics, they were done with Bruce.
Right.
And even if you look at some of those early songs like Wrathchild and Iron Maiden and Sanctuary, I mean, most people would say, oh, I kind of like the versions with Bruce when he did it on the Live After Death record.
Right. I mean, that's the ones they always use on the compilations. Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, it's interesting. Like you had said, I think all three vocalists definitely have their pros and cons. I'm going to throw this question out there because we've been giving a lot of love to Bruce. should Bruce continue to record and sing? I mean, we're starting to see some cracks in his you know, trying to
His metal voice.
yeah, his metal voice. I mean, I love Bruce, but
Yeah.
he's obviously with the throat cancer, his age, he's, you know, getting to the point where I don't know, should he, I'm going to be the, you know, throw it out there. Should he stop recording? Should he stop singing, or do we want more from him?
So my position on that is I'm a fan of Bruce. I'm a fan of Iron Maiden.
Yeah.
And as long as whether he has to change the register that he sings in or however he sings in, I think he should keep going. I think any musician, as a fan, from a fan standpoint, I want them to keep going. So I'm not one of those people that's like, you can no longer sing in a particular way that we knew you from. You should stop. I think artists should just continue. They should grow, but they have to do it gracefully. Right. And if he can't hit those notes, don't bring in backup singers to do it, but don't struggle to do it either live.
Right.
Just don't sing those parts. Change the the key that it's in or whatever is necessary. So I think these artists should keep going. They should go until they can't go.
Right. You know, and I agree with you. I mean, I would like to see Maiden record another record. You know, does Bruce? Can he sing like he used to? No, but like you were saying, maybe they can change the song structures and the key of the song to match where his vocals are now.
Right.
That's why, I mean, maybe that's why live they perform most of the newer stuff. I know they want to promote the new record, but maybe Bruce doesn't want to sing a lot of that older stuff because he can't really reach it anymore.
I don't know if that's true in the sense that if you look at their tours, they always do, when the album comes out, they do a tour, and you're right, they'll play 6 songs off of an album, which I think is great because most bands don't go out and promote their albums. So I very much like that, but they always alternate. The next tour after that is a greatest hits tour. Yeah. And they usually focus on all the stuff pre-reunion.
Right. So
they're still doing that. I'd have to go back and watch some of those live performances and see how he's doing on those. You know, like Flight 666, that was a greatest hits. And
well, he's some of the songs in here.
Yeah, I did not like that live recording at all. In fact, I bought the album and I was so disappointed with it, I returned it.
Yeah.
So it is actually the only album, live studio, anything that I don't have from Iron Maiden in my collection. And I'll probably pick it up at some point.
Right.
But it's bad, in my opinion. It is not good. I don't know why they released it.
Yeah, I agree with you.
So there's the bad point from Bruce. It's caught on tape.
Yeah. So I think you know, I think it's good. We kind of mentioned some good, some bad, and some ugly with all 3 of these vocalists.
Right. Even the iconic Bruce Dickinson, you know.
Yeah, so I think everybody's like, Bruce can do no wrong. Well, you know,
there's a little.
Just a little bit. Yeah. I mean, Bruce is
Bruce. I mean, come on, right?
Yeah.
But yeah. And we're starting.
He goes by Bruce or Bruce Dickinson. He's awesome.
Right. So
yeah, so I think
love to see a tour where all 3 of the singers, Iron Maiden goes out and does a legacy tour where they have all 3 of them. Unfortunately, I don't know.
Halloween's doing that.
Right. But I don't know if Deano could do that. I know he's had a lot of health problems lately, but I would love to see Blaze come out with Dickinson and, you know, do a couple tracks where Blaze comes out on his own and does it, or they could even do what, like you said, like Halloween, and they can have Blaze sing a verse, Dickinson, Deano. What a tour that would be.
That would be amazing.
Wouldn't it?
That would be.
You got 3 guitarists. Let's have 3 vocalists. Come on.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, give it up to each vocalist because they each brought something different to Iron Maiden.
Is who is their drummer? Clive Burr Edwards, right? Did he pass away? Do we have any drummers? Can we add some, you know, get some more drummers in there? I know they've only had 1 bass player, so.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Let's just get all the members of Iron Maiden there.
Right.
Clive, I don't think Clive is with us anymore though.
I don't think I think he passed away too.
Yeah.
Anyway.
But Nico can fill the drum.
Void. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, they can bring Mike Whitmore out. He'll fill in for anyone.
That would be pretty amazing.
Wouldn't it?
That would definitely bring a new flavor to Iron Maiden.
Oh yeah.
But
All right, we're on a whole different topic here with drummers
yeah.
now.
Well, thank you for joining me with this,
You're
Brett.
welcome. This was
And
fascinating and interesting.
I'm interested to, and I say this a lot at the end of videos, but it's true. I'm interested to hear what the viewers think. Like, I have a feeling I know what your favorite vocalist is, but I'd love to know some comments, some, just thoughts on Blaze Bayley and Paul Di'Anno and sort of where they rank and, your listening. So I think I know, but I still want to read it.
That'd be good. I'd be interested to check in on all of that as well. So,
yeah. Well, thank you, Brendon.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks a lot, Chris, for having me.
Everybody else in YouTube world, we will see you in the future.
Very good.
Future real.